Okay, in this lesson, we're going to talk about similar figures. This should be familiar to you because you have talked about similar figures in the past. And we know that two polygons are similar if they have the same shape. They can have the same size, but they don't necessarily have to. They just have to be the same shape. Then we have, when they're similar, that means that the corresponding angles are congruent. The angles are what determine the shape. So the angles have to be congruent for it to be similar. Then we also know that the corresponding sides are proportional. And that should be the part that maybe is really familiar, something you've done in the past. Corresponding sides are proportional. Remember, corresponding just means that they're in the same place or position on each triangle. And so let's look at an example. We know that triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. The way the triangles are stated also helps us. Look at our little congruent markings too. Because angle A has one marking in it, we know that angle A is congruent to angle D. They both have the same marking. So angle A is congruent or equal to angle D. Angle B has two markings. So look, it matches up with angle E. So angle B is congruent or equal to angle E. And then notice C and F both have three little congruent markings. So we could say that angle C is congruent or equal to angle F. Okay? Now let's look at the sides. So right now the triangles are turned the same way, but sometimes they try to trick us. So what I want us to see is that angle AB, side AB corresponds to side DE, and I'm going to use a different color. If you have a different color, you might stop the video and grab it. Side BC is similar to side EF, and then side AC is similar to side DF. Do you want to come in? Oh, somebody came in and left. Okay. Whoops, and that didn't show up very well. Okay, so those are the sides that are similar. And so when we talk about that the sides are proportional, you should remember that you can write proportions to solve for it. Now I know that we have numbers in our picture, but I want to go ahead and write this with letters because this is where it gets confusing and you may see some examples like this. So I just want to look at, first of all, side AB, which corresponds to side DE. So we could write that side AB corresponds to side DE. I can write that in a ratio. And then I'm going to say that it's equal to two of other corresponding sides. Maybe AC and DF. Those go together. So what I want you to notice in this proportion, I put corresponding sides together. AB with DE, AC with DF. But I could write this a couple of different ways. Number one, I could take each of these fractions or ratios and I could flip it. DE over AB, and then DF over AC. Okay, so it's going to mean the same thing, it's just written upside down. Okay, so I also could take sides from the same triangle. So I could put AB over AC, and then DE over DF. So I've basically taken the same proportion and written it so far three different ways. I now could take this one and I could flip it. And so what we just have to remember is we want to keep our corresponding sides together, keep our same triangles together. We don't ever want to be multiplying together two sides from the same triangle. So I would never multiply these two together. I would never multiply these two together. And you can see that they're always sideways from each other or up and down from one another. Now, if I used numbers, side AB is 4 and DE is 6. So I could say 4 over 6 equals 8 over 12. And that might not look equal, but they really are. This simplifies to 2/3. This also simplifies to 2/3. So remember, proportion just states that the two ratios are equal. And again, I could take this proportion and I could write it in these 4 different ways with the numbers. Okay, so let's look at our next example. It wants us to determine the missing side. So you should be, again, familiar with writing proportions for a missing side. So lots of different ways we can write it. We might want to take the sides from the same rectangle. So I might say 4 over 5. Okay, so what corresponds to KN in my other rectangle? Okay, hopefully you said PS. So I would need to put 3 on top and then the X on bottom because it goes with side KL. Okay, so again, other ways we could write this. We could write 5 over 4 equals X over 3. That would be another way to write it. We could also say 4 over 3 equals 5 over X. And then we also could flip that so it reads the other way. So several different ways, 4 different ways every time to write the same proportion. So now remember, to solve a proportion, we butterfly or we cross multiply. So that would give me 4x equals 15. If I divide by 4, I would get x equals 3.75. Okay? So the last few problems, I want you to actually try on your own. And when you're finished, raise your hand and I will come check it.